and welcome to Manor Hill Productions Live, where we're doing our best to stay connected to our friends, clients, industry partners, the rest of the world during this time when we're all working from home, or most of us are, and bring you the kind of information and learning that might help you create a better event. That's what it's all about, the live event industry. So let's get on with the show. Before we start with the program, I want to do an industry spotlight. Our industry spotlight this week is the Nature Conservancy. This is a global environmental nonprofit organization that works to create a world where people and nature can coexist and thrive. And they're a longtime client of Manor Hill Productions Live, and a longtime client and a live event partner, which is the way Manor Hill Productions Live approaches all of their work. They're in partnership with their clients to collaborate and make a great event. So we're recognizing the Nature Conservancy this week for the tremendous service they're providing to families, and especially parents who have kids that are being schooled at home during the COVID-19 shelter in place. They've created the Nature Lab. That's an online learning resource for parents that's filled with downloadable curriculum, videos, virtual field trips that allow students from across the globe to enjoy adventures in science, which is a great way to learn, and we salute them for everything they're doing for the planet and for parents, especially now, to help us make the most of our time indoors learning about the great outdoors. Thank you, Nature Conservancy. So let's meet our two panelists for today. We have a very exciting topic called Automation Nation, and you're going to learn more about what that's all about. First is David Hubbard, Chief Strategy Officer for Manor Hill Productions Live. Hi, David.
Bill, thanks. I'm really excited about this topic. As you know, it's an area that of production that I've been really anxious for us to begin integrating along with our content production capabilities for many years. And you add that to the fact that we've already produced several notable events in 2020 using automation, and we have some really cool designs in the pipeline. The time could not be better for us to talk about automation and get the creative gears turning with our customers out there. So,
okay, looking forward to it. Thanks, Dave. All right, now let's introduce Benjamin Lampman, Project Manager, Problem Solver with SGPS and Show Rig. This is a company that is a very great production partner with Manor Hill Live Productions. There's a lot of great collaboration. They've got 30 years of experience producing innovative concepts and creative problem solving to the industries of live entertainment, music touring, special events, industrial trade shows, conventions, motion pictures. I mean, they're all about entertainment. So welcome, Ben. And would you say it's accurate problem solver?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things that keeps my job exciting. So absolutely. It's the part I enjoy.
Good. Okay, so we're talking about automation. We know what that is, but maybe not everyone does. David, what is automation?
So it used to be that, what we would consider automation back in the old days, we would rig something simple, maybe a banner or small set piece, oftentimes using the same non-precision chain hoist, chain motors that we would use for a lighting rig. We would raise and lower it on cue. We might have a mechanical door hidden into a stage wall that we could open and close to create an entrance for a presenter. These things could be repeated with some degree of confidence. Another example that is widely seen, are the use of turntables, revolves. We see them a lot in auto shows going back, decades, where these things were used. Just really simple technology, start and stop, hit a button, product rotates. And we were wowed by that. But these things were largely mechanically, manually operated devices with really basic capabilities, and they lacked precision, they lacked consistency, and more importantly, they lacked a level of safety that the computer-controlled systems of today provide.
Okay, good. So that's automation up until 2020. Now it's 2020. Ben, what does automation mean today?
Well, automation today, we are able to use computer control to run motors to move different objects that we need to move. So therefore, you can have 100 different things moving at once, and there's a computer determining whether or not it's safe, whether or not anything is going to get hurt. Anybody's going to get hurt. It allows us to be very precise, very repeatable. We can hit a mark within 1/8 of an inch with much of the automation control these days. So it's totally different than 10 guys pushing a turntable.
All right. So the kinds of things we're used to seeing at rock concerts, people flying around, stage set pieces moving all around, mechanical movement, but as you're saying today, controlled, repeatable, and safe.
Yeah. Performer flying, like you would see in a Cirque show or a Broadway show, is something that you just couldn't even do without automation and without the servo drives that they have today.
So the kinds of things we're used to seeing at big rock events, Cirque du Soleil, those kinds of things, but those things are now, because of advancements in technology and because of people like SGPS who are problem solvers, those things can be done and achieved at corporate events, smaller venues. So let's learn more about automation. Let's start with some definitions of what some of the tools are and the technologies are that are available to us. David, you want to start? What's a winch?
Sure. So the winch is a device that is rigged or mounted overhead, and it's used to basically raise or lower something, whether it's a scenic piece, a product, or even a person. In its most basic form, it's a metal cable that's wrapped around a steel drum that raises and lowers given the direction that the drum rotates. Depending on the application or how fast or precise we need to raise or lower something, can determine both the type of winch. There are many different types, as well as the number of winches that will be deployed for a given project.
Okay, good. Ben, trolley.
Trolley. So a trolley is something that gives you linear motion in a horizontal fashion. You can, depending on how you set up a track, you can move things up and down stage or left and right. These can be used in combination with the winches that David mentioned to raise things up and down and move them left and right. Or another good example would be like an LED wall that opens up to have a doorway in the middle to allow people to walk through. Is another use of a trolley.
So something sliding along a track, basically.
Yes, yeah.
Sorry to oversimplify, but.
Nope, that's true.
Okay, David, elevator.
It's exactly what it sounds like, Bill. It's a device that is used to raise or lower something, but unlike the winch, the elevator is something that's going to sit on the floor of the stage or of the venue. It's an example. You can really see, how the engineering of this particular one is a round platform. You can see a compact footprint built within the deck, but with some tremendous telescoping capability. It's a great example. In this design, and this one's really more conducive probably for smaller environments, such as a ballroom or an expo hall. It's a compact design, but you can see it starts below the stage deck, which will allow us to preload a presenter or a product for a really dramatic reveal.
Mm-hmm. What makes that one cool is it can go like up to 18 feet in the air, which is pretty crazy for something that small.
That is
amazing. Are you able to, Ben, are you able to achieve that height and still make it stable? I mean, of course the answer is yes, but is that a concern?
Yeah, no, it's something we've worked on a lot over the years to make a very rigid telescoping structure. The fact that it has cabling on both arms allows it to be really, really stiff and feel sturdy when you're up high. I mean, there'll still be a little bit of sway, but nothing that really would make you feel too queasy in your stomach.
Okay, this next one is one that goes back to the earliest days of automation. David, you mentioned it earlier, turntables. That's just a building block of automation. Ben, tell us about turntables.
Yeah, a turntable, or as a revolve, as we sometimes call it, is a rotational device, often built into the stage, that can rotate much like a record player. The one you see here in this picture is actually rigged to a video screen and is rotated around so that the backside of the video screen could be treated with a graphic or something else when you didn't need that, when you didn't want to have the video screen present.
Okay, good. Yeah, and that's something to think about too. It's, it's like trolleys, winches, turntables. It's, a lot of times it's for moving people around and revealing people, but a lot of times, it's for set pieces too.
Yeah, a lot of things to reveal a prop or a product are great uses of automation.
Okay, good. And we're going to see a lot of that as we continue our discussion today.
Mm-hmm.
Creepers.
So a creeper is something that's used to move someone or something across the floor of the stage or floor of the venue with high degree of precision. Examples might be bringing a band on stage that's preset, bringing them from upstage, downstage, or moving a presenter or an entertainer farther out into the audience in a controlled way. If you look closely at this example, we're seeing a creeper that is used to bring a stage section into alignment with another section, but looking even closer, you can see that the creeper has a turntable built into it. And that sort of brings up, this whole other point, which we're going to see some great examples of later, where while each of these components are really cool on their own, it's when we start combining them that really we really ramp up the magic for these things.
So Ben, the next one, Kabuki drop. What's that all about?
So Kabuki drop is a device that holds up a curtain or a piece of soft goods and releases it so it falls to the ground. Now, the next effect we were going to talk about is a sniffer. And a kabuki is often used in combination with a sniffer, like we're seeing in these videos here, where the drop is released and another winch or effect is used to suck the drop up and out of the way. I really love this effect because I think it's a way to add a lot of interest to a reveal. It's a way to be like, bam, and it's in your face. Here's our new product. Here's this new thing we're showing off. There's a lot of great uses of this, as you can see with like the truck reveal that was just shown. So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I think the truck reveal is a great example too, because it shows that these devices, especially in the example with the kabuki and the sniffer, can be incorporated in a trade show environment, as well as the ballrooms and arenas and concert venues that we see a lot of these other technologies used.
Mm-hmm. So Kabuki drops a cover to reveal something. The sniffer pulls it away to reveal it.
Yeah.
Or, as you said, a combination of both. First you drop it, then the sniffer gets it out of the way.
Yeah, it beats having 5 guys running out there to scoop up the drop and haul it off stage. It really makes it a lot more fun.
Yeah. Okay. David, what is an Austrian system?
Yeah, so the Austrian system is, if you've ever been to a Broadway show or a live theatrical event, you've probably seen the Austrian system in action. It's basically a system that allows a curtain to be raised and lowered while maintaining this really elegant scalloped look, symmetrical swags, festoons, the pleating, all of that. Very, very elegant.
It's got a real dramatic, it'll lend your event a dramatic flair.
Yeah, it's definitely something that is used for something, as opposed to the kabuki and sniffer, where it's, something instantaneous and maybe high energy. The Austrian can be, incorporated where we want something that's a little more progressive, and the timing's a little more controlled.
All right, let's get to the one that's, this is just the one that gets a lot of attention because it's very exciting, is when you're flying people around. Personnel flying systems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, personnel flying systems are another thing that definitely weren't possible before the computer-controlled automation. But the one that we're seeing here with Kenny Chesney is a 4-point flying rig where there are 4 different motors rigged all over the stadium, and it allows him to be flown pretty much anywhere he wants to. In fact, he had the ability to kind of point where he wanted to go, and a guy backstage with a joystick would drive him in that direction. So it was always kind of a fun effect. But this is a very complicated, large version. We have some simpler versions where it's more of a combination of a winch with a trolley system, which would be more like a simple Superman fly across the stage or something like that. Would be another effect you could accomplish by flying people.
Okay, so another option then, if you want to move people around and that's not right for the venue or the budget or whatever, is the stage arm, the flying stage arm.
Yeah, the flying stage arm is a really, really great effect. As you can see here, they were able to take a performer from the stage, pick them up, and lift them out into the audience, which is just another way to bring the audience closer to the performance and to make the live show very interesting and give it some wow effect.
Okay, so those are just a list of some of the different kinds of technologies available through automation. They're all cool. Of course, they're even cooler when you combine them and get more out of them to meet the needs of the event, the budget, the message, whatever you're trying to achieve. But I guess the good question is, just start a real basic why. David, why automation? What does it bring to a show? What's the impact?
Well, I mean, the simple answer is it adds a level of wow factor, and a lot of times that's one of the initial asks we get from a client is we want to do something different, we want to do something dramatic, we want to highlight a keynote speaker in a way we've never done it before. We've got a new awards program that we want to launch, whatever it may be, a new product. What's a really cool and dramatic way that we can present that? And in automation and the many different types of automation technologies that we've looked at so far are just many of the ways that can be accomplished. I mean, it really adds something that's unexpected. I mean, the audience in most cases may have seen some of these things, in a rock concert or, some other type of entertainment with the Olympics or whatever, but they haven't necessarily seen them in the type of meeting environments that we work in. And so when we're able to bring that automation in, it's the wow factor.
Ben, what's the benefit? I mean, this sort of seems like an obvious question, but still, what's the benefit when you use automation to not so much move things around on the stage, but bring the show into the audience and engage the audience and sort of blur that line between you're the audience, this is the stage? How does automation solve that?
Well, automation allows you to do it in a repeatable, safe fashion. If you had a bunch of guys tugging on a rope backstage, they might feel good in the morning, but by the evening not be quite strong enough to pick up the CEO, which wouldn't be what you'd want. The winches don't get tired, which is a good thing. And it allows you to do some things that you just really wouldn't be able to do through general mechanical means. Bringing a CEO or a performer out into the audience is tricky when they're just walking around, but if you can lift them up over the audience, it allows everybody to see the person and it allows them to move quickly in a manner that is fun and kind of cool.
Well, yeah, along those lines, Ben, another option that automation gives us is not only bringing the presenters or the performers out into the audience, but it's bringing the meeting content out into the audience too. David, you talk a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the ways that we're doing that is we're bringing LED screens that maybe start the show on stage, and we're bringing those out into the audience during a pivotal part in a speech, a capstone moment at an event, and using trolleys and winches and some of the devices that we've covered the terminology on earlier. We're able to do that in a controlled fashion. We're able to take a video wall, move it out into the audience on a trolley, raise and lower it, retract it back into the main display. So really, really cool stuff. In addition to that, Ben was talking about the flying stage arms. We're working on some designs and have submitted some designs for events that are outdoors where you've got 30, 40,000 attendees in this outdoor venue, and we can only make the front of house screens that are carrying the content so big, and the presenter, if you're in the back row, looks like an ant, and so we want to get that presenter out into the audience, and using a flying stage arm, we're able to do that with a high degree of precision and safety, and really engage all of those attendees that that are at the back of the house. So those are just some of the examples.
Okay, good. So for the meeting planner or the production partner out there who's thinking, okay, automation, let's see what we can do to bring automation to our event. There's really a couple of different things you have to think about. One of them obviously is budget, and we'll get to that in a minute. But first, let's just talk about the limitations of the venue. David, what are some of the things you need to think about if you want to bring automation into a venue?
So yeah, so a lot of things for us to consider, and a lot of them aren't necessarily unique to automation, but they are important and necessary. Rigging is one of the considerations that we have to take into account. Are there rig points in the venue? Do they bear the weight that we need? And if not, can we develop a cost-effective workaround solution that'll preserve the concept that we're going for? Electrical is important. Does the facility have adequate power, and is it where we need it? And if not, can we pull it into where the event's taking place? Ingress and egress is also important. Can we physically move the various systems into place? And that's important because with automation, we want to be able to assemble a lot of these components ahead of time in the shop before we bring them on site, not only to make the install go faster, but we want to leave plenty of time on the back end as much as possible for rehearsals.
Okay, so there's the physical things such as rigging, electrical, and ingress, egress. Then there's the time factor. You mentioned rehearsal, but not only rehearsal, but setup time. I mean, this is just one more thing to set up and test and make sure it works.
It is, and one of the great things about SGPS and their physical plant is that they have enormous space, and they do a lot of testing in the shop, assembling complete structures. So we're able to actually go in ahead of time as well and see these things in action. And they're able to do, tremendous amount of pre-production timing and planning, which is very, very helpful. But it doesn't take away from the time we need on site to do rehearsals, but it does help.
Okay.
Yeah, every effect we send out gets run and tested before it leaves. We use the cables, the actual cables that you're going to use on site in the shop to make sure that you don't have a bad cable. And we just try to mitigate as many of the problems when you're that you could potentially have when you're on site, because that's when time gets very, very expensive. And we recognize that because that's the business we're in.
So David, let's go back to rehearsal time a little bit. It's that gets the rehearsals a lot of times it gets a short shrift with or without automation. So what can go wrong, and why is it so important to have rehearsals?
Well, I mean, anytime you're adding, anything new or complex, which automation can certainly be both, rehearsals are critical. It's imperative that we build enough time into the production schedule to test not only the automation components on their own, but also in conjunction with everything else that's happening, the content that we're creating that is working in tandem with the automation, stage activity, presenters coming on and off stage, bands moving on and off, all these different things that work in conjunction with the automation need to be rehearsed to the nth degree. There are a lot of horror stories out there where companies have pushed automation on their customers. They've dabbled in it. They've come up with this really cool idea that they saw at a rock concert, and they sell this pretty picture to the client, and they either didn't build enough time into the production schedule to rehearse, or it's just something they didn't think about. And then they get on site and they end up with an insurmountable problem between what the automation is doing or can't do, mixed in with the show flow, and they're out of time and the problem can't be solved. And so the result in some of the worst case scenarios is that the automation is not used as it was originally presented, customers unhappy, or the automation just has to sit there idle and doesn't do anything, which is, again, a worst case scenario. So we don't get into either of those because, going back to what Ben said about the level of rehearsing and R&D that they do in their shop, the time we get on site, that combined with our building in rehearsal time, it leads to a successful event.
Mhm.
Okay. And once again, we're gonna repeat this over and over again, but it really is the collaboration and the partnering with everybody, the production partner, the people who are providing the automation, communicating in advance with the venue. Let's make sure in advance that it's going to work, and then when we get there, let's make it work, make it and practice it, rehearse. So it's all got to work together.
Yeah, allowing for some time to program and do that stuff really actually is a benefit to everybody. It's not just in the safety world and all that, but it just allows things to even look better. A lift actually just going from the stage up is all in all not that interesting, but if you allow us to program a little bit more moves into it or gentle moves, it can look a lot more interesting and be a lot more fun for your event.
As well as integrating lighting cues and sound
Mhm.
effects and, all of those other elements.
All right, well, that takes us to the B word, budget. Definitely a consideration. David, what happens if I have, for my event, Cirque du Soleil dreams, but not a Cirque du Soleil budget? What are the different things because all those things that, the elevator, the turntable, those cost money, but there's other costs associated with that that you got to think about too. What are some of those?
There are associated costs, and I want to mention, I'll list them off: rigging costs, electrical costs, which we talked about earlier, or electrical service. Staging and risers is something that can easily be overlooked. You can, rest assured that when you're integrating this automation, you're not going to be able to use facility decking, whether it's hotel risers or convention center decks or whatever. We're going to need to bring in custom decking that is built and designed around these components. So that's something that you want to make sure your production partner does not overlook. We talked about rehearsals, and of course, with rehearsals is going to be additional labor or labor time for that. Travel and transportation are not necessarily unique to automation, but they could be impacted depending on the number of components and what those components are. And then I think most importantly, one of the things that is often overlooked, especially when we're integrating other technologies such as video, is an allowance for content. We want to make sure that if we're going to integrate an LED wall on a turntable or have an LED section fly over the audience, that there is both relevant and high quality content on that screen. And I'll just want to add that, it's a practice of ours at Manor Hill Productions, and I would encourage customers and event planners to request this of other suppliers that they may be working with, to have their production partners provide estimates for all of these things, the rigging, the electrical, even if those are being provided by the facility, which in most cases they are. It's important that the customer have the full budget and they understand the full scope.
Okay. Well, Ben, this question's for you. Let's talk a little bit about what options are available to people who have either venue limitations or budget limitations. There's some smaller, less big, is that a word? Less big types of automation that will fit into a venue or a budget. And I think a turntable is the first one I can think of.
Yeah, turntable's a really simple effect, but we have them varying sizes from 4 foot in diameter to 50 feet in diameter. So you can really add on the wow factor, like you can see in this car reveal here below. The LED screen rotates and you're able to see both sides. You wouldn't know that it was there until it happened, which is kind of great.
Yeah, and that one, I'm just going to say that physically that's a small footprint because that doesn't need the rigging considerations. That's nothing hanging from the ceiling. That's mounted on the floor.
No, that's mounted on the floor. You would have the staging concern that David brought up, but that's something that you would want anyways, just because it's going to make everything run a lot smoother when you load in that turntable. Rigging is definitely a concern in a lot of the spaces about weight, but if you're going with a kabuki drop or an Austrian or some sort of soft good reveal like that, the weights really aren't that significant. And most of the hotel ballrooms and convention spaces are built to take those sort of loads. Like this is an enormous arena that we saw the kabuki reveal in that video, but you can do it in a much smaller room and have an amazing effect.
Well, then can I jump to the conclusion then, since I do see a kabuki drop and a sniffer sometimes separately or combined with each other, since I see that so often, is it safe to assume that that's one of the less expensive ways to use automation? Is that
I mean, it's depending on the length of your drop. If you're going 80 feet or less, it's pretty easy to do. When you're getting into, say, 100-foot long drop, then it starts to get a little crazy. But yeah, I'd say it's an affordable solution or one of the lower price solutions you can look at.
Okay. Oh, and speaking of reveals, we have one here that's it's an automated curtain reveal. David, tell us, what are we looking at here?
Yes. So this, unlike the Austrian system that we showed earlier, this was a system of winches that was used to raise a 150-foot wide curtain that was concealing a video screen. And as the curtain rose, the video played, and the screen became larger and larger and larger. And we used this to open the conference. This was in the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas. So it was a really dramatic effect. By having the screen completely hidden as people walked in, they were kind of in this underwhelming environment of, where's our stage set? Where are the screens? What's going on? And then using the winches and using the curtain reveal, we were able to present to them the largest screen that they'd ever seen.
Ben, we talked about elevators and the lectern rising out of a stage. That's also a reasonably simple thing to accomplish. Is that a good option for people looking, with some limitations to bring automation into their event?
Yeah, as you can see in this example here, we are seeing the chain smokers where they actually had the drum set hidden below the stage, and the audience didn't know it was there, and they were able to bring it up and reveal it. So it's definitely a good way to deliver a performer, a prop, or something to stage. Here we have Ricky Martin. He starts his show sort of crouching low so the audience can't see him, and then he's lifted about 15, 20 feet in the air so that he's definitely the center of attention at that moment. So
yeah, and really on a smaller scale even than those, just like for a corporate event, and this really doesn't even have to be a big room or a big budget. Something about the CEO rising out of the stage, I don't know why. I'm a sucker for that every time. That always goes over big. Nobody ever gets tired of that. There's a really dramatic, fun way to reveal the CEO or the presenter. But you get the dramatic music, the lights, the CEO in silhouette coming up out of the stage. That's a home run every time.
Yeah, absolutely.
We did a car reveal earlier with a rotating turntable. What's another way to reveal a car or reveal anything? But you've got an example, Ben.
So here is a custom fabricated structure that we made, a garage, if you will, covered in video tiles. And there's just a very simple winch on the end to open the door and have this car drive out. And then actually, if you look at it, it's made a great revealing of this car. They were able to make it look like robots were building something in a garage, and then bam, their new product has rolled out onto stage. So, combining some simple fabricated scenery pieces with automation also adds a lot of bang to your reveal and to your automation, actually. So. Okay,
good. Well, let's do a case study. David, tell us about your experience with answering some client questions the client needs earlier this year. And by the way, I just want to say that I like this case study because it uses a lot of different kinds of technologies and automations, but it's not just hardware for the sake of hardware. It specifically addresses a client's need and what they wanted to happen for this specific event. So David, tell us a little bit about the backstory of that.
Yeah, it really is something that just kind of grew to include more and more components as we got into it. But it initially started out, the client was looking for a way to dramatically open an award ceremony as part of their conference. They were also going to rebrand that awards program, and so we had those two things going on. There was also a business meeting taking place in the same venue earlier that day. So, and it had grown as well. So some of the things that we were needing to accomplish were not only the rebranding and adding this wow factor, but we also needed to be able to incorporate larger video screens than we'd had the year prior because the audience had grown for the business meeting. And yet we didn't want the business meeting model to look like the awards, and we didn't want the people in the business meeting to see what the awards components were going to be. A lot of them were going to be at both events, and so what we came up with was this idea to have a flying LED cube over the audience, and we thought that that would be really something cool to launch, and it would raise up to the ceiling and travel down a track, and in tandem video screens that for the business meeting were in profile would slowly rotate on stage to create a wider canvas to project content onto. And so I reached out to Ben at SGPS and said, all right, Ben, can we do this? Can we build a cube, or can we have an LED cube fly over the audience? And
I said, yeah, absolutely. I had questions on what the limitations were, about the venue, and what exactly the end of look wanted to be, and we were able to hash out a lot of details and I think deliver pretty much what is in that rendering that has been going across. In fact, surprisingly, looks
yeah,
just like.
I mean, it really, when you see the video from the actual show compared to this rendering, it is really phenomenal how close they are, especially considering that this animation was done very early in the process before we had worked out all the technical kinks. We did want to confirm, of course, before we went back to the client with this concept, that the concept was technically feasible, and we had a reasonable amount of confidence in what the cost was going to be, even though there were still some unknowns at that point. We put the animation together once we had that level of confidence in the project, and presented it to the client. To say that they were blown away was probably an understatement. But once we got the buy-in from the client, then it was back to SGPS and our technical directors working with their technical directors and their designers on how to move forward. And along the way, of course, refining our production schedule, refining the budget, working on content and all of that to get to the final product.
Yeah, and what's exciting about this one is that it was a combination of a lot of different technologies. You had the winch, which was going to lift the cube up. You got the trolley to move that cube along the track, which involved looking at the limitations of the room and creating, laying out in this CAD drawing where the track was going to go. Then you see the revolving towers. In this animated CAD right here, you can see the original thoughts on how the towers were going to revolve. And then, of course, that custom LED cube. So Ben, I guess you just went to a shelf somewhere at SGPS and went to your shelf where you keep where you keep the LED cubes and just pulled one off.
Unfortunately, no. We had to fabricate a custom frame for this. Every LED product is different, so therefore the frame behind it needs to be different and suited for that LED product. I think my first thing I said to David was, you need to get me an LED tile so I can look at it, figure out how we're going to build something to do it, figure out how we're going to support it. And amazingly, he was able to get me that in a couple days. And we sat down and designed a structure that would be strong enough and support itself to be able to pick itself up. Originally, I think it was supposed to be video on 6 sides, but I had to go back to David and be like, I can't put video on all sides because I need to be able to have a place to put some lifting points to be able to pick it up. David said he understood, but he was like, but can that surface glow? And I said, yeah, we can come up with a way to make it glow. So we then were designing a structure to support the LED and support the lighting inside of the LED box, which cube, which really, I think, makes it look that much more special. And it's that sort of collaboration and back and forth that really does bring a show together and makes it something that everybody wants, makes it something that also is that much more fun.
Mm-hmm. And,
yeah, and I think Bill, this is something you could identify with from our having worked together for many years. Is just when Ben thought we were done, I would kind of throw another, fly into the ointment and say, well, okay, if we're going to do lighting inside, can we do strobe lighting and tie that in with the video? And of course the answer was yes, we can do that. But then for content folks who are working on the content, you in particular, were like, okay, well now that means I need to think about editing the video so that it, works in conjunction with the strobe lighting. And so, yeah, it was just a great collaboration all the way around.
Yeah, because that really is, the Cube is, it's basically, it's a three-dimensional, it's a three-dimensional video screen. And just like any video screen, you got to think about the size of the video that you're going to make. So we worked with SGPS to create a pixel map, which you see here, which gives our editor basically a map, a pixel accurate map of, we got to make a video that wraps around this thing. Again, the pixel map is an important part of the design because you can't just say take any video and stick it on the screen, because that Cube that's moving video. That's not just a picture. So there was a video playing back on that screen, which was really cool. And as you mentioned, it's not just solid LED panels. There's flashing lights inside of it. So what were those kinds of panels, Ben? That allowed you to see the lights through it?
Yeah, they're panels actually originally made for outdoor shows, which allow the wind to blow through so that you don't have to take as much of a wind load when you're setting up a big LED screen. But using a little bit of theater magic here, we knew if we kept it dark inside the box, you wouldn't notice anything. And then if you flash some lights behind it, you would see the sparkle coming through the video panel. And, it also is a nice way to make it not just all about the content. It added another dimension to the end picture.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I'd like to go back for a second and talk, just at the very beginning of this, to talk about, during walk-in, when people walked in, the cube was lowered to the ground. It was, resting about 3 feet off the ground. So when people walked in, they had no idea that this thing was going to move. They had no idea that it was video. We had a static image on it during walk-in. And so, once the show came alive and that thing started moving and the motion graphics on it came to life, we talked about that wow factor, the unexpected earlier. This is a very good example of all of that coming together.
Yeah, and then one final complication and a bit of coordination that we had to figure out was we had to work with SGPS and say to Ben, okay, this cube is going to take X. How long is it going to take to get along the track? Because we need to make a video that's that long. Can you tell us how long that's going to take? And they were like, well, we've never done it before, so I don't know, but hey, we could estimate.
Yeah.
So that's just another complication, right, Ben?
Yeah, it is one of the questions I'll always ask when we're doing automation, particularly early on, is what speed do you need your effect to move at? And often nobody really has a set idea. But it is a limitation of the winch, and it'll help me choose which equipment to use if you know a speed. But in this instance, we had something, a flying video cube isn't something that we necessarily had done before. And everything, we've got it hanging at the end of long cables, and I don't know how much it's going to swing or how much it's going to, move when we move it super fast. I know what the winch can do, but I don't know that you want to go that fast. And that's, once again, we mentioned it earlier, but that's where rehearsals and programming time are very important. And you could see in this video, it moves fairly quickly, but we have a nice deceleration at the end so that you don't have this thing hanging around, swinging around and looking scary. So.
And again, you talk about the rehearsals and coordination. You can plan it all out, but until you get there, you don't realize, like we did on this one, oh, that thing is going to run right into the CEO who's standing at the lectern. So we had to move the lectern somewhere else. So it's just you can plan all ahead, but once you get on site, you gotta adapt and sort of make it up as you go along. So I'd say it's a success. I mean, David, you said the client came to you with a multi-level ask. Were all of their questions answered? How did they react? What was the client response?
It was tremendous. The audience was absolutely floored. I mean, the look on their faces as this thing raised and moved overhead was really exciting to see. And it was just could not have been happier internally working with SGPS to pull all this together. It's definitely not something that you're going to put together in a matter of weeks. We fortunately we had a number of months to put this together. We'd always like more time, but we had an adequate amount of time, even given the fact that it kept throwing new things at Ben, like we want to add lights inside it, or now instead of having the cube return to the middle of the ballroom, can we extend it out and have it land at a different spot? So having enough time on the front end led to a really successful event, while giving us a great deal of flexibility to work through some different scenarios and consider some new approaches.
This is another good example of collaboration and creativity, and don't be put off by the limitations of your room, the limitations of your budget, whatever you think they might be, because that room is that was a low ceiling. How tall was that ceiling? Do you remember?
About 20 feet, 20 foot to trim.
That's not a tall ballroom, but Ben and SGPS, worked out, I'd say, a pretty streamlined solution that got a lot of technology and a lot of movement into a reasonably small space. So that was cool.
Yeah, no question about that. And not only did they, work with us on coming up with, a streamlined solution overall, but really were instrumental in helping educate us as we moved along, both on the technical side as well as what needed to happen on the creative side, whether it was content or rethinking, some of the original ideas of the concept. As Ben mentioned, it really couldn't be video on all 6 sides because he needed space for rigging and technology and so forth. So it is having that kind of collaboration that leads to success.
Okay. Well, Ben, let's do a little bit of show and tell and brag on SGPS, and tell us about some of the cool things you guys are working on or have worked on.
Well, this video here is a video of some flying pods and scenery we built for Trans-Siberian Orchestra. You can see that they just sort of hang there, but then all of a sudden they start to move. And these things are covered with video product, LED, and lighting instruments. And it really they're able to change the scene and the feel between each different song that they play, which really it adds some wow. Another thing that we worked on that was a lot of fun was a drum revolve gag for Blink 182. This was a fun one and a good example of where someone came to us with an idea and said, "Hey, I want to do this thing. Do you think you could make a drummer spin around inside a ball and inside a globe?" And we went, yeah, we can do that. And this effect here, you can see, combines 2 revolves with a drum set attached to it, so the drummer can even go upside down. And then we also had a revolve on the globes on the top and the bottom, so it really gave an extra spinning effect. And the whole thing was on a creeper, which would drive it down stage so he could do a drum solo in the middle of the show. It was really quite fun thing to work on. Another another project to mention is Zed and a custom DJ booth that we built for them. This has a couple Revolve effects in it, but the booth itself is covered with LED product. I'd say it looks kind of like a gigantic gyroscope, but it's a very impressive wow sort of thing. And I guess what I'm trying to point out here is we have the standard things that we talked about, but don't be afraid to come to us and bring up ideas of a custom or totally new idea. We'll absolutely take a look at it and let you know what it would take to put together. This the DJ booth we were looking at there is very crazy and cool, but that's not necessarily what you need every time, but we can do those things too.
All right, well, that's really cool, Ben. And I want to go back to one of the themes that's gone throughout this entire webinar is collaboration and how important it is for you to have partners, a good production partner like Manor Hill Productions Live and SGPS, who both know what they're doing. And when you combine them, it's a combination of experience and creativity and enthusiasm. So, I mean, you just got to have somebody that brings a sense of fun to the project. Ben, I'd certainly say that's you guys. And tell us about working with Manor Hill.
The 7-Eleven project could not have happened if it weren't for the designs and the concepts that Manor Hill brought to us. It really was an inventive way, I think, to simply use some automation to really add a lot of interest to the show and fit all the needs that the client needed. I really liked the fact that there was a cube sitting, a video product with a cube sitting in the audience that no one knew was going to pick up and move at any point. And it's a really fun concept to bring the audience into more of a participation with the show, which is what I think we're all aiming to do. But it was, I have to say, this was a lot of fun to work with Manor Hill on, and really great design and ideas.
Good.
David, final thoughts?
No, I absolutely. I've already said it, and just to repeat, this show would not have been a success without Ben and his team and the guidance and collaboration that we received.
Okay, good. We've got some questions that have come in, and we have time, I'd say, for about maybe 3. Depends on how long the answers are. But let's give it a shot. Let's start with, now that we've gotten several of these, what does it cost? Now, we've said early on, that is a simple question, but a complicated answer, but we'll try to answer it again. Ben, what does it cost?
Well, it all depends on what it is you're trying to do. If you're trying to do a lot, it's going to cost more. If you're trying to do a little, the price won't be as high. But I think it really all comes down to what you're trying to do. Let us, work with you on coming to what that solution needs to be. We don't like to say, hand out a bunch of effects and say, pick which ones you want and we'll give them to you. We like to look at the whole effect and decide how the best way it is to use everything. Some things to kind of keep in mind is if you're doing one effect, there's still going to be a base cost for your system, your operator, and your people on site. So when you can add a few more effects, there's that initial cost that'll be covered, and it doesn't cost as much to add more after the first effect.
Well, yeah, and the answer. So really, the answer to the question is what does it cost? Is another question. What are you trying to do? As you said, and David.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's where you and Manor Hill Productions Live get involved, is working with the client on the creativity. What is it you're trying to say? What is it you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think I really don't want people to be scared by numbers. Come talk to us. We'll try to work out and come up with things within your budget.
David, what role do you as a production partner play?
Well, it starts with that discovery meeting with the client, or that ignition, if you will, where we're trying to drill down and find out exactly what it is they want to accomplish, much like we did in the 7-Eleven case study. And if the end result is going to be a 6-sided LED cube, then that's what it is. If it's going to be a turntable, then that's what it is. In terms of the overall cost, you know, I like to treat the budget as one big pie, if you will. Um, so you know, we feel like we get the biggest production value out of an event when we're able to take the entire budget, and that means, you know, everything that's been spent historically on video, lighting, audio, maybe decor, maybe the entertainment for a reception that's, you know, not even related to this particular function, but nevertheless a cost for the event, and putting all of that, you know, money into one bucket, and then saying, all right, how can we maximize this? And the end result does not necessarily have to be that adding automation is going to add a tremendous amount of expense. It may mean reallocating some funds, and so that's, you know, that's one approach that we like to take early on, and not just, and it goes to, you know, to Ben's point about, we don't like to just throw elements out there and say, you know, turntable is going to cost this much, a winch is going to cost this much. Those things really have to be incorporated with everything else that's going on, and so that's how we approach it. And I think you know, that's the most cost-effective way to really get the most bang for your buck.
And you got to remember, it's all scalable. So, you know,
Everything's scalable. I mean,
price tag for a turntable, they're all different sizes. Go ahead.
yeah, everything's scalable. I mean, we saw, you know, we saw examples of things flying over audiences in outdoor stadiums and arenas, and we saw, you know, the LED cube flying in a ballroom. We've seen turntables on small stages and turntables on massive stages. So you're exactly right. It's all scalable. It's all what will work within the venue parameters, what will work within the budget, and as we said earlier, you know, what is relevant, and what is really going to add to the event, and not just be used for the sake of using it.
Okay. Let's move on to the next question. Yeah, this is a good question. What kind of specialized crew do I need?
Ben, I'm gonna let you answer that one.
Well, we will provide crew with any automation that we rent. Crew they will do the programming. They will be in charge of the automation. It's really the best way to do it safely. You need quite a bit of experience, and often the short time it takes to these events are, you know, you need someone walking in the door with that experience. As far as beyond that, we may need a few additional hands for load in and for strike, but nothing more than, say, if you're setting up additional truss, then that's sort of the additional hands that you need. Or if you're setting up another stage for a turntable, we'll need additional hands to set that up. But we send the professionals along with it to run the automation itself. And it's also part of the conversations we have up front about what we need for the production. We let you know how many hands we'll think it'll take to set up a turntable or to set up truss.
David,
it's not unlike, you know, other areas of the show where we have specialized talent running sound or video or lighting, or directing scenic installs. You know, we need that same specialized talent when it comes to automation. And you know, I go back to the 7-Eleven as an example, you know, where we had all this stuff going on. We didn't have to increase the local crew, the stagehand crew, that much, because we already had a certain number of people on the setup to build the stage and the lighting. And so effectively managing that labor, we were able to, you know, move some of those same people over to help with the assist of the install, because we had the high quality, you know, skilled talent from SGPS directing it. So that's just another thing you want to look at is, you know, how can we consolidate labor that may already be assigned to a project in order to keep the costs down.
Okay. Let's do one last question. This is okay. This is a pretty basic one, but it's a good question. I have an idea of what I want to do. How do I know if it's possible, and what do I do first to get started?
You ask Ben Lampman.
Oh, I would say your first step is to actually give Manor Hill a call, let them know what you want to do, and then we'll sit down and start to figure out how to do it. If there's questions to be asked or things to be determined, we'll ask them. And but give Manor Hill a call, and we'll get the project going.
David, would you concur?
I would absolutely concur.
Very good. Okay, well, listen, thanks, guys. We really appreciate it. We got to get wrap this up. So thanks for everyone for logging in. David Hubbard with Manor Hill Productions Live, thank you for your time. Ben Lampman, Chief
Absolutely.
Creative Problem Solver and Project Manager for SGPS.
Thank you.
And again, thanks for everyone for logging in. And be sure to stay logged in even after the webinar concludes so that you have an opportunity to respond to a survey, which will be available immediately afterwards. Give us your feedback, and also don't forget to let us know what kinds of topics you'd like to see us cover in the weeks to come. So thanks, everyone, and be sure to go to manorhill.com. That's manor-hill.com to visit the Manor Hill Productions website, see past videos, and leave comments for anything you'd like to see us cover in the weeks to come. And we appreciate you logging in. David and Ben, thank you, and we'll see you next time.